Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to introduce to you your host of Golf Business Live tonight, your CEO, Mr. Jay Karen. Howdy!
Thanks, James. Well, I'm going to say good evening. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Golf Business Technology Conference and to Golf Business Live, right? The ham to my egg, Don Ray, sends his regrets that he couldn't be here tonight, but he'll see you soon at the PGA show in January. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to read what I would say is the most humble bio which is on this man's website. Grew up poor as a church mouse, failed the 5th grade, barely passed high school, fought in the Vietnam War as a U.S. Marine, graduated University of Baltimore, magna cum laude, CPA, runs 14 businesses that do okay. Our guest is a man who's built not one, but 14 companies and 2 empires, and he's done it his own way. He took a little idea called GoDaddy and turned it into one of the most recognized brands on the internet. Then instead of retiring to a golf course, he decided to build one. And then, of course, there's PXG, one of the boldest and most talked about brands in golf today. He's a Marine, a billionaire, a philanthropist, and a guy who's never been afraid to stir things up. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Bob Parsons. Where's the howdy, people? Come on up here.
I'm from Baltimore. This is stage right?
Yeah, it's stage left.
That's
You're
you.
Stage left.
Huh?
We rehearsed.
Oh.
You're stage left, I'm stage right.
You know, it took me 1 minute to fuck that up.
All right, Bob, have a seat. Well, we know where this is going. All right. Well, welcome to the NGCOA family, Bob. I can call you Bob, right? Is that okay?
Pleasure to be here.
Okay. Everyone's tonight receiving a copy of Bob's autobiography, Fire in the Hole. You got it there on your tables. Even though you're getting a copy of the book, I would highly recommend downloading the book and listening to it on your Books app, because Bob reads the book in his own voice. Now, Rock Lucas, I know you got a South Carolina public education, so I know maybe the audiobook might be the only option for you, but I know, I gotta do it. But, you know, Bob, in that book, you had me honestly laughing about your stories and honestly crying about some of your stories. Anytime you talked about your family, your parents, your children, the emotion was real. And, you know, if you've heard Bob talk, he's got a very gruff voice, and so it was kind of hard to tell if it was your gruff voice or your trembling voice when you were talking about, you know, crying and talking about your own family in that book. But I really appreciate how vulnerable you got in that book and telling these real stories. So thank you for doing that. You know, I learned through this book that Bob is a yes man. What I mean by that is, as a kid, working at a gas station, yeah, I'm going to do that. By the way, there was a robbery and a stick-up at that gas station. That's an amazing story. He testified against the actual criminals as a kid. So, I mean, you have to listen to this book. Join the Marines? Yeah. Go to college and major in accounting? Yeah. Start your own software company? Yeah. Start your own website, building and domain registry business? Sure. Buy a private golf club? Yeah. Start a golf equipment company? Sure. And then there are some unexpected stories in your book, such as a daunting encounter in high school with a girl named Pauline. Yeah, we're not going to go into that. I'm not going to ruin that. You have to read it. And then later in life, promoting plant-based hallucinogenics or psychedelics as a way to unburden people with mental and emotional problems. It was just a left turn I wasn't expecting. By the way, everybody's got free samples under your chairs. And then we're going to save some Q&A for the end. But why don't we start, Bob, with telling us about growing up in Baltimore and how that kind of shaped your upbringing?
Well, I grew up in Baltimore, East Baltimore, as a matter of fact, and it was a working class neighborhood, which is the best thing I could say about it. And it was something else. I started my first business there. It was a lemonade stand. Yeah, I remember one day I decided my mother was, I don't know where she was, but nobody was home but me. I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I decided to make lemonade. It was August in Baltimore. It was one of those days where you could just see the heat just moving up off the asphalt in the streets. And I knew that lemonade was sugar and water and lemon. And so I put sugar and water together, and then there was a bottle called Real Lemon, and I poured that in there and mixed it up. And no matter how much I put in or what I did, it didn't quite taste right. And then I got the idea, maybe this is how it's supposed to taste. So I got a pitcher, and the pitcher had sweat on it from the heat, and and the cold water, and the ice, and so I put it there. And there was this my first customer. His name was Mr. Hill, and back then, insurance people would walk debit routes because that's the only way in Baltimore you're going to get paid. You got to knock on the door and ask for the weekly life insurance premium. So that's what he did. So he's got his coat slung over his shoulder. He's got a pork pie hat on, slung back. He's sweating like a hog. And he sees me, and I got a sign, lemonade, 5 cents. He says, man, do I need one of these. So he gives me a dime, told me to keep the nickel. And I pour him a cup of it, and he throws it down. His eyes bulge. He fucking starts weaving. I thought he was going to pass out. And he spits the lemonade in the street, and he goes, kid, that's the worst fucking lemonade I've ever tasted in my life. So anyhow, I gave it to a couple more people, and Suzanne from across the street, her mother says, my mother says you got to give me my money back. And then I didn't sell too much more. And my mother, when she came home, she says, what are you doing? I said, I'm selling lemonade, Mom. She says, how'd you make lemonade? And I told her, and I said, I used sugar and water and then a bottle of lemon juice. She says, I keep vinegar in that bottle. So she made lemonade the right way for me, and it was tasted pretty good actually, but I couldn't get anybody else to try it.
Your brand was a tarnish at that point.
So that was my first business, an utter failure.
Oh, all right. So there's so much to your life here. We're gonna move quickly through some of these stories, but I know that the next chapter in your life was the most meaningful when you were a young man joining the Marines. So talk to us about what inspired you to join the Marines. Was it happenstance? Was it a plan? How did it happen?
Well, I didn't think it over too much. I mean, I was 17 at the time. I wasn't a good student at school. I was terrible. Failed the 5th grade, and nobody can ever take that away from me. And it looked like I wasn't going to graduate. I discovered alcohol then. There was a senior in high school. Alcohol and the opposite sex, neither one has ever been known to put a guy on the dean's list. And so anyhow, I sure wasn't there. I was pretty sure I was going to fail every subject. And I was in gym class, and this was probably March or April, and 2 guys come up to me and said, "Hey, Bob," well, Robert, they called me Robert then. "Robert, what are you going to do after we graduate?" I said, "Well, I don't think I'm going to graduate." And they said, "Well, we're going to go talk to the Marine Corps recruiter on Conklin Street. You want to go with us?" I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." And so I go with them, and, I never seen such men. I mean, everything about this guy was perfect, and, everything. I had us at hello. And to just get right to the point, all 3 of us joined. Now, this was in 1968, the Tet Offensive, the height of the Vietnam War. So we all joined, the three of us joined the Marine Corps, and I had to get my mother to sign for me, and she said, maybe this will be what you need, and so she signed for me, and it was very prophetic what she said, because it certainly was. And so anyhow, I went back, and the recruiter said, well, geez, we're going to be checking your high school grades, and we're pretty selective. Now keep in mind, this is in 1968 in Vietnam War. It'd have took me if I didn't have arms. I believed him. I'm like, oh God. So I take and go through all the screening tests and so forth, and I go back 2 weeks later, and he says to me, I'll never forget, Robert, we think you'll make a fine Marine. And I was in Vietnam 8 months later, carrying a rifle, and I was.
Tell us about your experience.
Well, I was with the 26th Marines. We were a rifle regiment, and our job was to keep the North Vietnamese out of the villages that were growing rice and so forth, so they wouldn't terrorize them, and they wouldn't steal the rice to feed the troops and so forth. And to do that, we ran ambushes, and we were pretty successful at what we did. When I first got to my unit, I found out that the guys in my squad, instead of being 12, there was 6, and 4 or 5 of them were killed about 3 or 4 days before, and one guy was very seriously wounded. And, they were in fact ambushed, and to a man, it was all the senior guys. And I remember thinking, God, the guys, and the guy that was in charge had been there 6 weeks. He was the guy that was calling the shots. He just turned 19. He's a dear friend of mine to this day. And I remember thinking, nobody knows what they're doing here. There's no way I'm going to get through this. And I remember I got really scared while I'm waiting to go out on the first night to ambush. And then it occurred to me, I'm not going to survive this. I'm going to die here. And when I accepted that, it didn't bother me anymore. I'd seen the colors. I just made myself a promise. I would do the best job I could as a United States Marine to make people back home proud. And that was pretty much it. Oh, and I would do whatever I could to be alive for mail call, because mail call's an important thing. So we go out on our first night, and bigger than life, we had to run into the combat. One of the guys loses his arm, loses the side of his head. It's just gruesome shit that war is. And, I got my first kill that night. I shot a snake. And the snake, when I was in a rice paddy and it was coming right towards me, I thought it was going to go to my one side or to the other, but it looked like it was going to bite my balls off. It was just right here. And when it got close, I put my rifle on semi-automatic, on automatic, and pulled the trigger, and he went to snake heaven. And I had that nasty ass water in my eyes and face, and I get it all out, and I look, and everybody else is gone. I'm the only one standing there. They're all underwater. And so, I got my first talk that night. The squad leader told me, he said, next time, don't shoot the snake. So there you go. That was my first night in Vietnam.
But you did get the Purple Heart. What happened?
Well, the first, I went 1 month to the day. We were in combat a lot of nights, and this night, the way we would do it is we would be, we'd first wait till it got dark, and then we'd move to an ambush site, and then we would be there for about maybe 45 minutes or an hour, and then we'd wait till it got really dark, then we'd move, and then about maybe half a mile, and then we'd wait another half an hour, and then we'd move again, and that'd be our permanent ambush site, and we'd wait, and then if anybody would come our way, we'd do our job. And that particular night, we were walking through a village, and I was walking second. I was on the point team. The point man his name is Bryant. He's a dear friend of mine also to this day. He stepped over, a real high stepping dude, stepped over a tripwire, and he missed it, and I hit it square on, and it was a Chi-Com on the end of it, which is what we called North Vietnamese hand grenade. That thing went off, and it blew my pants off. It not off like the legs, and it caught shrapnel on my arms, and so I was pretty screwed up. And then I was medevac back to Air Force Hospital in Japan until I recovered. That's how I got wounded.
Man, we could talk about the military service probably for this entire hour, but I know it was a seminal chapter in your life that when you look back in retrospect in your success in business, what was it about the Marines that really changed you to become what you were able to do?
Well, the Marine Corps changed me in every way. When I got out of the Marine Corps, Marine Corps is different from the other armed forces, and not that it's any better, it's just different. And like for example, during then, the tour in the Army, Navy, and Air Force 12 months. Marine Corps 13 months. If you're wounded in any of the other armed forces, you're out of combat. Marine Corps was wounded 3 times. Now, in all fairness to the Marine Corps, it's very easy to be wounded 3 times with those guys. So I mean, that's just the way it is. And but when I came home, and I went to college, and when I went to college, I studied accounting, and to everyone.
Tell people how you chose accounting, please.
Huh?
Tell people how you chose accounting.
You really want to know that?
Yeah, I think I want them to know. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the way I chose accounting was, it wasn't real analytical. I opened the course book up, that's got all the different things you can major in, and the first one in the book was accounting. and the guy in the registrar's office I said, what's that? And he says, you good with math? And I said, I think so, I'm as good as anything. And he says, are you interested in business? And I said, yeah. He said, you might want to study accounting. So I did. And, if I'd opened it backwards, I'd have been a zoologist. But the reason, it was a very fortuitous choice because I loved it. And there you go. And what the Marine Corps did for me is the Marine Corps taught me the importance of responsibility that is sacred. They taught me that the importance of discipline, that you didn't have to like something to do it, you didn't have to want to do it, but if you had the responsibility, you had to do it, so you did it and keep your fucking mouth shut, right? and they taught me that I could do and accomplish far more than I believed I could, and they taught me that I had a right to be proud, and all those things together made the biggest difference in me. I come back, I was a different guy, as opposed to the aimless kid that went in. But I was also changed in ways that were not so good. I had PTSD, beat the band. And, where PTSD actually in some ways helped me, PTSD, everybody that I know that it was in combat had PTSD, and they self-treated it some ways. It was either drugs, alcohol. Some have friends that live up in the mountains and never come out. And then with me, I buried myself in my work. And it helped me up quite a bit. And then isolation. And the reason I liked accounting so much is I deal with people.
I mean, to go from barely finishing high school to magna cum laude with a CPA degree, I mean, let's give this guy a hand. I mean, for that transformation, you need to talk to my 17-year-old, please. I am going to have you down in Charleston and talk to my 17-year-old about responsibility. How's that sound?
I handled it.
Yes, you did. Well, let's now move into the next chapter, because most people know you for GoDaddy fame, but they don't know that you had a pretty darn successful business before that. Talk about how you went from accounting into having a pretty darn successful software business.
I did. When I was working in accounting, I had an opportunity. That's when the first microcomputers became available, Radio Shack TRS-80 and on and on. And this was about 1975 or so, and then I got an Apple computer, and it became my love. I mean, and what I would do is I'd write the code before I would buy anything. And so if I wanted the computer to do anything, I wrote the code. And I got to be really, really good at it. And then I wrote a home money management program that I eventually called Money Counts. And I remember I just started a business in my basement, and I worked a real job. I was running a leasing company for somebody else, and then I was running this software business for myself. And then the first year, I priced it, I think, at $99. I didn't know how to sell it. I didn't know my ass from a hole in the ground. And but I decided to do it, right? And so I barely sold any. Next year, I kept improving the software, dropped it to $69 or $49, lost everything I had. Second year running. Wife, surprised me. She went along with it. I mean, I would take it and spend a couple $1,000s on an ad and get no calls. I'd be running. Anybody call? Nobody called. Then one day I had somebody call me, and I'm sitting back. I'm broke. And they have at a Fort Dodge, Iowa, this thing called the computer bargain line, a real rag, right? So it had a glossy cover and a glossy back, and the inside was all newsprint with just ads. And so I took in, they said, we have the outside front cover for $5,000 we can sell you. It's usually $15,000. And they said, are you interested? Now, the one thing I always did is I always paid my bills. I think the Marine Corps taught me that. But I paid my bills, and then I bought the ad. I didn't have any money, but I just had a hunch. And so I created an ad, and it said, Money Counts, but it only cost, and I dropped it to $12. You know, you hear people say, well, it doesn't cost enough, nobody will buy it. That's bullshit. All right. So anyhow, I take and run this ad, and then after it's out a week, nothing. I'm used to that. And then all of a sudden, a couple of ads, and then a couple of ads, and you see these commercials where there's advertising, direct marketing. They show them a mailbox stuffed with envelopes. Well, that's the way mine looked. Holy shit! Right? And so I took, and the mailman was eventually putting a box down for all the letters, and then that he couldn't fit in the mailbox. So I think I made $15,000 on that ad.
Wow.
And then I started calling the other computer company, computer magazines, Compute, PC World, and some of them are no longer around, anybody that would give me credit, I bought and put that ad in. And I remember the first year, I made $250,000. I never made that kind of money in my life. I didn't know what it was like to have that kind of money. But I had it, baby.
So how did it grow to be, what happened to that company?
Well, what happened is I quit my real job with the leasing company. They begged me to stay, and I said no. And then I kept going, and I eventually found out how to market. I raised the prices then. I remember telling my wife that one day we'll sell 100 copies of this, one day, and she says, that'd be too great, couldn't believe that. One day I sold 22,000 copies of it. Wow. And I also was able to ship them all the next day because I built the system to do that. So I sold that company for not a lot of money, for $64 million. And
what year was that? What year?
Yeah. And then, I was offered, my wife and I decided we would sell it for $48 million. And the company that offered us was into it. And they offered us $60 million. And I told them I knew enough to tell them I was insulted. And I got $64 million for it. So for a year or so, I couldn't work. I had an agreement not to compete. Got divorced. She didn't want to be married anymore. No, it's no fun being married to somebody who's got PTSD. So she was a good wife. She was wonderful. She put a boot in my ass and sent me, I guess that's Texas talk, right?
Yeah, talk.
she sent me walking. And so I went on my business, and I moved to Arizona, where I started a company eventually when I could, called GoDaddy, and I called GoDaddy. And I started that from scratch.
Wow. So back when you started GoDaddy, when you first had to explain to people kind of what a domain name was, did they look at you like you had three heads? How did you go from nothing at GoDaddy to success?
Well, it was a jagged road. The first thing I did was I knew I wanted to be involved I knew I wanted to be involved in the internet, and back then the internet was just cooking, just getting ready, and so I took and hired some people, and the idea was we would do whatever we could to make money, and what worked we'd keep doing, what didn't work we'd quit doing. It's called search fund. I didn't even know it had a name, but to do business that way is a very quick and easy way to lose all your money. So what I did was I started with, because my wife got half the money, more than half actually. I had a total of $36 million. I started with $36 million, and I said, I won't worry about this company until I have $30 million. I got right to $30 million. Wouldn't worry until I have 25 million, 25 million, 20 million, 20 million, 15, and then I got down to $6 million. And back then, a couple of years before that, we decided to do domain names. And the only thing that we found that would give us any traction, would make any money, is build websites for people. But the problem with building websites is you couldn't make money doing it, significant money, because you were limited to the websites you could build. So we got the idea, and when I say we, I mean me, got the idea that we would build software that people would buy, and they would build websites and pay us for the websites. They do the work. All right. So I did that, and then every one of those websites needed a domain name, and the domain name companies were rude to me as you can't imagine. So I went ahead and started my own domain name company, and eventually called it GoDaddy. And so what happened was, I got down to where I had $6 million, and I decided I'd shut the company down because I couldn't even see the red light. And that was in, I think, somewhere around 2000, 2001, 2002. And when I started the company, I went to Hawaii to decide how to what I was going to do with the money, how I was going to pay the employees, how I was going to pay my bills, how I was going to sell what assets I had, and the turnaround happened for me when I went to get my car from the valet, and the valet guy was sort of the happiest guy I ever seen in my life. He was throwing his keys in the air. Mr. Parsons, how you doing, buddy? Can I get your car for you, and so forth. And this guy could have, the richest guy in the world, probably had nothing. But I thought, I got $6 million. This guy has nothing, and he is happy as hell. I have $6 million, and I'm miserable. What's wrong with this picture? And I was saying, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to just keep the company going, and if it turns around, fine, it turns around. If not, I'll park cars. Actually, I decided I'd go to Vegas and be a stick man on a craps table. I like doing that. And give this man. I forget what it is.
That's all right. So,
but anyhow. So I'd taken, I wish I could tell you I did things different. This was in January, February. In October, the thing happened that made GoDaddy. It was the .com crash. And that's how I did better than all the other companies. I survived the .com crash.
Wow.
And then the domain names that I was selling for $12 and $8 and so forth, and I had good service when the other companies didn't. Then all of a sudden I was noticed because they were all gone. Every week, there'd be a company that I would be doing business with that would just vanish. And I mean, when I say vanish, I mean vanish. They were gone, baby. I'd send them a check for what I owed them. The check would come back, and no such person at this address. Just rip that baby up and hang on to the next thing.
What I love, Bob, is these two moments in your life when you're in Vietnam and you realize, I'm going to die here, like this seminal moment of clarity, and that changed everything from that point forward. And here you are in Hawaii, this guy, I think you said in the book, he must be in his 50s, and he's happy, and he's all, and then you had this epiphany that, screw it, I'm willing to lose it all to be happy, and that changed everything. I think there's a serious lesson there for all of us in this room.
Well, the Chinese have a saying that says that success is often found just before you're about to quit. Or see they're on the brink of failure, either one.
Wow. Well, so you sold GoDaddy at some point, right? So you grew it to what size? And do you mind sharing that number?
I grew it to over 5,000 people. I was doing business in every country that was legal for us to do business in. I got a lot of offers for it. I mean, I had offers. First one was 100 million. I didn't even consider that. Another one was for 500 million. I didn't do that. And friends that I had in Germany called One and One. They offered me $1 million, and I didn't do that. I mean, 900 million, let's say. I sold it for $2.3 billion. And
can we give him a hand on that one?
and I kept 29% of it. And so 11 years later, I sold that 29% for another $2.5 billion.
Wow. Smart guy. Oh my gosh. Now, you were pretty well known in the GoDaddy years for your advertising, right? The Super Bowl ads. Fast forward to 2025. If you were running GoDaddy today, what kind of ad would you run on the Super Bowl today?
Well, if I was doing GoDaddy, it'd be the same kind of ad.
Yeah.
Only a little saucier.
A little saucier.
See, the deal was, I was selling domain names, which was the product that everybody else, all the other domain name companies were selling. The only difference was the other companies that registrars is what you call a company that has domain names, is the only difference was they were selling hosting first, a place to do your website. I was selling the domain name first, and then I would sell hosting. Because I learned early on that when somebody wants to start a business, they do the domain name first. Then they do hosting. These idiots never did figure that out. As a matter of fact, one time I went to I only, the whole time I owned GoDaddy, which was 12, 15 years, something like that. I took and went to one trade show, and it was at Microsoft, and it was literally how to compete with GoDaddy. Now, when I sold GoDaddy, I had a 75% market share, right? You think these fucking idiots would copy what I was doing? No. So anyhow, I went to this thing, and I remember saying to my chief of staff as we walked out, we don't have a thing to worry about.
By the way, before we went on stage, I told Bob, I said, this isn't the USGA, this is the NGCOA. You can speak freely.
Yeah, he said, you can say whatever you want. I said, good, I'm from East Baltimore. I speak French.
Oh my gosh. So you sold GoDaddy, and then again, like I said, instead of retiring, you decided to get into the golf business. All right, that's the business we're in here. So why? Why did you start PXG?
Well, here's the deal. Now, I decided, I had $2.3 billion. I wasn't married then, and didn't have any partners. What am I going to do? I figured maybe I'd buy a football team. I never actually looked at a football team, but I thought about it a lot. Or I'd get a golf course. And golf course right around the corner from me. I just happened to one day, buddy Mike said, come over, this place is for sale. And it was called the Golf Club Scottsdale. I don't know who the Einstein was that dropped the out of that, but that's what it was called. So I went over there, and this place was lovely. It was surrounded by 3.5 million acres, government land. It had its own water. Needed some work. It was like a beautiful woman with some bad teeth. So what I did was, I bought the company. I bought it for actually $100,000, and the company that owned it, well, they weren't happy. I found a loophole which enabled me to buy it for $100,000, and so I gave them another $500,000. I said to him, look, you're going to have to sell this to me, or we'll sell it in the courts. But if you sell it to me and we get it done by August, I'll kick in another $500,000. So that's how I bought it for $600,000.
Wow.
All right. So, and then I hired some guys to fix the teeth. Right. and then I bought the land surrounding it. And it is now over 700 acres. I put $325 million into it. And if anybody ever tells you you can't do much with $325 million, just tell them to give you $325 million and you can show them.
That's Scottsdale National, right?
That's Scottsdale National, baby.
It's got 2 18-hole courses, a 9-hole. Right?
Yeah, it's 45 holes. It is, we have 151 members. It is, we're the only golf course that I know of that in the Scottsdale area that doesn't overseed. We use 328 Bermuda, and we save a ton on water. Nobody looks at it, can tell we don't oversee, because I found the trick. And you know what the trick is? Is when it gets cold in Arizona, and I've been telling everybody this anyhow all the time. Nobody do it. And it starts turning light. You dye it green, the green that looks just like the just like the grass,
Right.
And the dark green draws the heat from the sun, and it keeps it growing.
Ah, very clever.
Imagine that, huh? Right?
Don't you think Bob needs to be a member of NGCOA? Right? Yes. As a golf course owner?
Well, I should be an accountant. I studied accounting.
That's right. Well, then how did that lead to PXG?
Huh?
How did that lead to PXG?
Well, I was on the driving range one day, and one of our teaching pro named Gabe Yurtstead said to me, he said, you know, Bob, these guys will do anything to improve the game. So-and-so, Mike Nicolette with Ping, I think he's up for a change. Yeah, I bet you could hire him to start a golf club company. And so I talked to Mike, and I happen to know Mike. And so we talked, and he says, you know, Mike, how come? Now, see, I was spending over $300,000 a year on golf clubs myself, because I'm a lazy guy in some ways, and what I always try to do is to do the easiest thing. So you know, I always would try to buy equipment that made big promises, see if it would get me where it said it would, and it never did. You know, when I started PXG and the media doubted me, I had my assistant Francisca here start pulling the invoices, and she quit at $300,000. She said, "Bob, just say it's a lot. It's a fucking lot." She was in the Marine Corps too, in all fairness to her. So anyhow, that's just what I did. And I said to Mike, how come the clubs don't get better? He said, well, Bob, we got deadlines we got to meet. We got price points we got to meet. we can spend so much money on and on and on and on. You know the crybaby song, right? So I said to him, Mike, suppose you didn't have all those things. Suppose you could spend as much money as you wanted to. You could take as long as you needed to, and we saw for whatever we needed to. And he says, man, I'd sure like to try. And he says, but I can never leave these people. And so he left me, and I told my right-hand guy, Steve, I said, Steve, I'll hear from him in 3 months. I heard from him in a month, and he said, and I have 2 more guys that want to come with me. and he says, we want to know, how long do we have to develop this? I said, you got 100 years. I was serious. And, I didn't know if we'd do it or we didn't do it, but they had 1 year where they couldn't do it. And then the other years they'd get to work, and then they did it in a year. And then we did PXG's first hollow cavity with the right kind of polyurethane insert with the right weights on it. No club looks like a PXG, and no club performs like it. Right now we're on our 8th edition, Gen 8s, and brothers, sisters, these things are like you hit them, you want them. And the same thing for the drivers in the long clubs. Nobody makes clubs like we do. And their slogan is you've never played like this before. Yeah, baby.
You've seen golfers spend thousands of dollars trying to buy a better swing. So what's that taught you about human nature when people are willing to spend that kind of money on golf?
Gabe was right. He was right.
And why did you enter the market and not work with distributors? It was direct sales only, right? To buy PXG clubs, you had to contact PXG. Why did you decide that model and not really go along with how golf?
I did that, and I did the high price model. First, I needed the high price model because it's good, and I wanted to be noticed. So I did things completely different from everybody, and it worked. And we got noticed from everybody. A guy told me once, he said, if you're at a bar and you want to draw a woman's attention, you drink beer. And I always told him, I said, last time I was at a bar, I started laughing so hard I had wine come out my nose. And he says, I said, no women paid attention to me. And he says, see, I told you. It's a different business.
Right. But I did notice a press release the other day, Bob, that said PXG is coming to the PGA show for the first time. So you guys are going to be in Orlando at the show?
We are going to the PGA show for the very first time, and we're going to market to clubs with the very first program for golf courses for us. And we think it's pretty good.
Good. No, it's good. It'd be great to see you guys there. Let's talk about the game a little bit, the game of golf. What's
That's a secret.
What's the secret?
Well, it was a secret.
No, there's a media release.
Yeah, but I want you to know it.
Okay, thank you. What's your perspective on the golf industry now, the game, how it's changed a little bit? You've got the tours divided. You've got what's happening, on the big stage. You've got millions more people playing the game. The vibe is changing in golf. So.
Well, I think the game of golf is now I think differently than you do, and you guys do, but I think it needs to grow a lot more. And one of the reasons why it doesn't grow, it needs to be a lot more fun. So some of the things we do at Scottsdale National, one of the things I like about it at Scottsdale National is I get to make the rules. Isn't that cool? The local rule, right? Like some of the local rules is if every club in your bag is a PXG, you don't have no 14 club limit. As a matter of fact, we got just about any club right there that you want to buy. And then there's another rule that Jack Nicklaus always has been trying to get in, but I always remind myself the reason golf is so punishing is because the Scottish invented it. Those sadistic bastards. If your ball's in a divot in the fairway, it's ground under repair. Move it to the side. You don't have to hit it out of a divot. What is wrong with these people, right? We rake the bunkers for you, right? We hire some people, and I haven't seen any automatic bunker rakers.
Not yet.
Yeah, but if you have them, I'll buy one. Matter of fact, I'll buy 3 of them. But anyhow, it just needs to be more fun.
Yeah. No, I think the vibe is changing towards that. I definitely see it. How are we doing on time, Taylor? All right. Okay, a couple more. I'll ask a couple more questions, and if you have any questions from the audience, please get ready. You've called yourself a serial entrepreneur. So how many businesses do you think you'll start before someone says, hey, Bob, maybe you should just take up pickleball instead?
They've already said that. I don't know. I just looked at another business to buy, which is rare. I usually just start them from scratch. And I decided not to, but I don't know. I mean, I have 14 of them now. And that counts as the foundation where we give to charity $1 million every other week, and I believe that's important. I give the Marine Corps. And the military guys and gals that are hurt in the military. Give them, they're the largest donations we make, and I don't know. I just do it for fun.
Yeah.
I don't do it to work. I never did it to work. I just do it to work, to have fun, and maybe you can talk about, and I'm married to my 3rd wife now. My first 2 wives gave me walking papers. They were wonderful women, both of them. They were just wonderful women. But I was a little too much for them. And so they sent me packing. And my 3rd wife, she got me treated for PTSD and completely changed me. And before that, it had been difficult for me to be up here and talk to you guys and so forth. I had to talk to you from behind the curtain. I'm teasing. Jesus Christ, don't be that's serious. but anyhow, there you go.
And he's also one of these billionaires, there's like 200 or so, that signed the pledge to give away half of their worth to charity. Talk about generous, right? And he gives, I think it's $26 million a year, every single year to charity. I mean, this guy, probably more.
Thank you.
What's something you hope people will say about you 50 years from now, and maybe something you hope that they don't?
Well, I don't think anybody's going to be saying anything about me 50 years from now because, I haven't done anything remarkable and anything like that. And what they do, I don't give a fuck what they say.
That's the answer I was looking for. Oh, it's the best. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, let me rephrase. You've given away hundreds of millions through your foundation. What kind of impact do you want that to have long after you're gone?
Well, I wanted to, at least help some people, put a smile on their face, maybe help them get to some place where they wouldn't otherwise. Maybe it'll be that. Maybe it'll do for them what the Marine Corps did for me. And the Marine Corps did that for me. I mean, I didn't do it. They did it. But I used it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. All right, who's got some questions for Bob? Raise your hand. Anybody in the room? Be brave.
I'll answer any question you ask me.
Oh, you know that.
You ask me anything.
How'd you come up with the name GoDaddy?
All right, okay. And me and I first called the business Joe Max Technologies, which is a very forgettable and stupid name. And it's this dirt road I used to pass going to work. Now, in all fairness to us, the company wasn't doing anything. You know, I would send people to a business meeting, and you know, all the local businesses would get together, and they'd go and they'd get their cards, and people would ask them, well, what do you guys do? And they said, well, we don't know yet. And they say, I've never met a business that doesn't know what they do. So me and a lady that went through 3 businesses with me, she and I stayed up like 3 nights in a row. I mean, no, not stayed up. Didn't work till about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And then we came up with the GoDaddy name, and we bought it as a joke. We said, Fat Daddy, taken. Big Daddy, taken. And then I remembered America Online, the Go command, and then we put that with GoDaddy, with Daddy, and it was available, so we bought it, told everybody the next day that we're going to call the company GoDaddy, and they're going, oh man, that is a terrible name. And it stuck. And that's where the name came from. And by the way, that person has just retired, and she left with, when she and I started working together, she didn't have anything. And she now has over 200 million.
Wow. Go Daddy. Other questions for Bob? Back here, Whitey.
Do you have any children, and if not, would you adopt me?
Do you have any children? And if not, would you adopt him? Whitey's taking his time with the answer.
No.
Over here. Kathy?
Bob, we met a few minutes ago, and if you all get a chance, he has a great conversation with Jada Smith on Red Table Talk. So listen to that. He'll tell you about how he handled his PTSD. I'm a big GoDaddy fan. At one point, I think I had 100 domains because every time I get an idea, I go buy this domain. I'm down to 40 now. But I wanted to know more than anything, were there any opportunities that floated your way that you didn't take advantage of or didn't jump on that now you look back and wish you would have?
No, none. Absolutely none. And anything I felt like I wanted to do, I did. And so far I've never failed at one of them. And the reason I don't fail is because, kind of helps be a billionaire. I keep changing, doing stuff different, and eventually it looks like I'm smart because I find a way to do it. There you go.
Any other questions over this way? I thought I saw some hands up. Back here.
Throughout your history, can you talk to us about a time when you were in the industry and like certain institutions within that industry may not want to move with an idea that you have, but you seem to know that the idea is going to work, but you just seem to be against insurmountable odds, up against walls. Can you talk about like how to shift your mindset and get around those walls or over those walls or through those walls?
What's the question?
Say that again, a little louder.
Essentially, how do you break through barriers when you're up against institutions that have long histories of operating one way?
Okay, I don't operate one way. I mean, I operate one way in the sense that, I have a couple rules that I stand by. By the way, Scottsdale National has essentially no rules, and because people don't like rules, and so we only have one rule, because they're there for a good time. No member shall interfere with another member's good time. That's it.
That's a good one.
Everybody loves that rule. The only, and then so the. Let me get my thoughts straight. The things that I do is the same always. Is I always start by myself. No partners is a rule of mine because I'm too eccentric. I do things so different, right? That no partner would stay in business and hang in there with me. So that's the one thing. So, but other than that, I do things differently. Now, if something goes wrong, it's my fault. It always is my fault. All right? And you know what? And the people that work for me are not afraid to make mistakes, you know, and Lord knows they fuck up. Now, this girl that left with $200 million, she probably cost me $1 billion. All right? But she also helped me make that couple billion. And so, I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, you know, you got to swing the bat or you don't hit the ball.
Yeah. Boy, to not have fear of failure, that changes everything. That does. Well, Bob, you know, your story is a master class in grit, in reinvention, and doing things your own way. From the Marines to GoDaddy to PXG, you know, you've shown what's possible when you combine fearless ideas with relentless work. So thank you for sharing your journey with us and your humor, but I have a token of appreciation that I want to give you. I don't know if Sheree, you've got it. So there's a story, hang on a second. There's a story, hey Sheree, hang back quick. There's a story in your book. That I'm going to share a story. I'm hoping you guys will read this and listen to this, but there's a story when he was a child. You were about 10 or 11, and this was, when you say he grew up as poor as a church mouse, it's true. And when you were about 10 or 11, you tell a story about the corner store and where it was around October, November, and the Christmas toys all of a sudden start showing up on the shelves, in the top shelf, you know? And there was one toy, it was this ship called the Fighting Lady, I think you said, and you really wanted it. And cut the story short a little bit, it was a disappointing Christmas. He didn't get that. And you say in the book, I could have 10,000 of these if I wanted now, right? Well, as a token of my gratitude for you being here today, we got you the original Fighting Lady from 1961, the battleship here.
Oh, baby!
That's for you.
Thank you. I'm going to go home and see if my wife will get in the tub with me.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my God, that's the best. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Bob Parsons.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.